Vulnerability is not weakness. It's about the willingness to show up and be seen when you can't control the outcome. And it is actually our greatest measure of courage. So, show up in an authentic way and let us see your hearts, because we know how lonely you actually are. To me, wholeheartedness is about being able to look at ourselves and to look at each other and say, I'm imperfect. I'm afraid. I'm vulnerable. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging and joy. That's what everyone's looking for. Everyone's looking for this sense of I'm enough, and my imperfection doesn't change that.
Brené is one of the introverts who really helped me get out of my shell and start making YouTube videos. She said that she's a huge introvert, but she is still out there spreading her message, and I really hope that this video helps you get out of your shell and go after what you want as well.
It doesn't change that. So I want to tell you about something that changed my life as a creative person. And it's a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. And this is the passage that changes my life. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with blood and sweat and dust, who, at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, at worst, if he fails daring greatly. So the moment that I read that, I closed my laptop, and this is what shifted in me. 3 huge things. First, that quote was everything I know about vulnerability. It is not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about showing up and being seen. The second thing, this is who I want to be. I want to create. I want to make things that didn't exist before I touched them. I want to show up and be seen in my work and in my life. And if you're going to show up and be seen, there is only one guarantee, and that is you will get your ass kicked. That is the guarantee. That's the only certainty you have. If you're going to go in the arena and spend any time in there whatsoever, especially if you've committed to creating in your life, you will get your ass kicked. So you have to decide at that moment, I think for all of us, if courage is a value that we hold, this is a consequence. You can't avoid it. The third thing, which really set me free, is kind of a new philosophy about criticism, which is this. If you're not in the arena also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. You armor up in this hallway. You shut yourself off from everything that you do and that you love. Because vulnerability is certainly a part of fear and self-doubt and grief and uncertainty and shame, but it's also the birthplace of these. It's the birthplace of love, of belonging, of joy, trust, empathy, creativity, and innovation. Without vulnerability, you cannot create. The 3 seats that will always be taken when you walk into the arena, when you share your work with someone, the 3 seats that will always be taken are shame, scarcity, and comparison. Shame, completely universal human emotion. We all have it. It's that gremlin that whispers, you're not enough. The other seat that's always taken is scarcity. What am I doing that's original? Everyone else is doing this. 150 people are doing it who are better trained than I am. What am I contributing? Does this really matter? The third seat, always comparison. How many of you ever struggle with comparison? Oh my God, comparison is a nightmare. To me, if you're going to spend your life in the arena, if you're going to spend your life showing up, really showing up. There's a couple things that you need. The first is a clarity of values. You have to, I know, when I came out here, I knew I could screw this completely up. I could get booed off stage, bad things could happen, but I don't have a choice because if courage is my value, I have to do this. Whether it's successful or not, it's irrelevant. So a real clarity of values is important. The other thing is you gotta have at least one person in your life who's willing to pick you up and dust you off and look at you when you fail, which hopefully you will, because if you're not failing, you're really not showing up. But who is willing to look at you when you fail and say, man, that sucked, but you were brave. And let's get you cleaned up, and because you're gonna go back in. And this is someone who loves you not despite your imperfections and vulnerabilities, but because of them. And they should have great seats in the arena. We were taught to suck it up, soldier on, get her done.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is defined as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Can you name one act of courage that you've ever been involved in or that you've ever even witnessed that did not involve uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure? No one wants to be uncomfortable. No one wants to be vulnerable, and everyone wants to be brave. And it just doesn't work like that. We are losing our tolerance for vulnerability. And in our culture, what do we think is synonymous with vulnerability? Weakness. And I'm going to talk about how that's not the case tonight. Vulnerability is absolutely at the core of fear and anxiety and shame and very difficult emotions. What is driving this intolerance for vulnerability in us? And I believe the answer is scarcity. We live in a culture that tells us that there is never enough, that we are not enough, that we are not good enough, that we are not safe enough, that we can never be certain enough, that we're not perfect enough. And maybe the one that we really don't talk about, that I think is perhaps the most dangerous, is that we are not extraordinary enough. The other piece that's tough is we're so self-critical. And one of the things that I think happens, and I think this happens a lot, it happens in different professions, but I think I see it a lot with creatives, is there is an ideal of what you're supposed to be. And what a lot of us end up doing is we orphan the parts of ourselves that don't fit what that ideal is supposed to be. And what it leaves when we orphan all those parts of us is it just leaves the critic.
Hey, before I let you watch the rest of the video, if you are liking this content, I am leaving down below a link with a free PDF with the biggest takeaways from this video. And there's also space for you to write what were your biggest takeaways, and you can start taking action right now.
When something hard happens and we're captured by something difficult, our emotions get the first crack at making sense of something, a bad look, a hard phone call, a disagreement at work. We think that we're rational beings. We think that cognition is going to carry us through and make sense of it, but it doesn't. Emotions driving, thought and behavior are not even in the front seat riding shotgun. They're not even in the back seat. Thought and behavior in the trunk going, hey, and emotions driving. So the first thing we do is we tell ourselves a story that reduces ambiguity about what happened. Men and women who have the greatest capacity for rising strong, in the moment something happens, they hack into that neurobiological process of making up a story. They stop and say, wait a minute, what's actually going on here? What am I feeling? What do I know for sure? There is nothing more profoundly dangerous than the stories we make up about our creativity. There are our creativity, our lovability, and our divinity are the three most dangerous stories we make up. And we have to reclaim those narratives. We have to say, just because someone didn't understand or put value on something I created doesn't change its worth or my worth. No one is ordained to take our story of faith, our story of spirituality, and say it's real or not real based on who we are or who we love or what we believe in. And then the biggest one is really our lovability. Just because someone doesn't have the capacity or the ability to love us doesn't change our lovability. It doesn't make us unlovable because someone couldn't love us. And one of the first stories we lean into when we have someone in our life who couldn't love us is there's something about me that's unlovable. I used to think the best way to put your work out into the world is to make sure the critics are not in the arena. But you have no control over who's in the arena. And the best way I have found is to know that they're there and to know exactly what they're going to say to you, because each of you know. And so often we are missing what is truly important because we're on the quest for what is extraordinary. Not understanding that in our ordinary lives, in the ordinary moments of our lives, is really where we can find the most joy. What are the consequences of trying to beat vulnerability to the punch? That you cannot selectively numb emotion. When we numb the dark emotion, when we numb vulnerability and fear and shame of not being good enough, we by default numb joy. We cannot selectively just numb the dark emotions. We have interesting research around this. We have research that shows us in addiction studies that an intensely positive experience is as likely to trigger relapse as an intensely negative experience. Let me tell you, if vulnerability is a sharp edge, there may be nothing sharper than joy. To let yourself soften into loving someone, to caring about something passionately, that's vulnerable. How do we embrace vulnerability? We practice gratitude. We stop and be thankful for what we have. So to practice gratitude, to honor what's ordinary about our lives, because that is what's truly extraordinary. We can compete with the images from the media, from the news, from the scary shows on TV, with our own images of gratitude about what's ordinary in our lives, the people we love, our kids, our family, play, our community, and nature. These are things that happen every single day that we're so busy being afraid we're missing these. I really believe, we want more guarantees. We want to believe we're not going to get hurt and that bad things are not going to happen, and they are. But there is a guarantee that no one talks about that, and that is that if we don't allow ourselves to experience joy and love, we will definitely miss out on filling our reservoir with what we need when those hard things happen. You have to show up as who you are.